Hi, this is Mrs. Arroyo, and today I'm reading Little Red Riding Minnie. Once upon a time, there was a kind-hearted girl who was loved by all who knew her. Her grandmother had made her a cape of red wool as a gift. The girl wore it so often that everyone called her Little Red Riding Minnie. One day, Little Red Riding Minnie learned that her grandmother was sick with a cold, so she decided to bake her a batch of her famous chocolate chip cookies for her. As soon as the cookies had cooled, Little Red Riding Minnie put them in a tin. She packed a bunch of super strong menthol cough drops in another tin, knowing that her grandmother could probably use some of those too. Then Little Red Riding Minnie put both tins in her basket and set out for her grandmother's house. The route to her grandmother's house took Little Red Riding Minnie right down Main Street through the center of town. Little Red Riding Minnie loved saying hello to the shopkeepers as she cheerfully passed their stores. Then, just as she passed the post office, who should jump out but Big Bad Pete. "Hello, Red," he said, "and where might you be headed with that basket?" Now, Big Bad Pete was known as a scoundrel, and he was about the last person Little Red Riding Minnie wanted to run into. But Little Red Riding Minnie tried to be polite to everyone, even Big Bad Pete. "Well, if you must know," Little Red Riding Minnie replied, hugging her basket tightly, "I'm bringing some of my famous chocolate chip cookies to my grandmother, who has a bad cold. Now, if you'll excuse me." And with that, she hurried on. As Big Bad Pete watched her go, his mouth began to water. Little Red Riding Minnie's cookies were famously delicious. So while Little Red Riding Minnie continued down Main Street, Big Bad Pete ducked into an alley and raced along the back streets. He arrived at the grandmother's house way ahead of Little Red Riding Minnie. Now he just needed a plan. As he hurried up the front walk, Big Bad Pete spotted the grandmother's wash hanging out to dry. He thought. Minutes later, Little Red Riding Minnie skipped up to her grandmother's door. Before Little Red Riding Minnie could even knock, Big Bad Pete jumped out from behind a bush disguised in her grandmother's clothing. "Oh, hello, Little Red Riding Minnie," he squeaked. "Have you come to pay me a visit?" "Why, yes," Little Red Riding Minnie stammered. "Grandmother's cold must be very bad," she thought. "She looks absolutely awful." But then Little Red Riding Minnie began to notice something. "Oh, Grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with," Big Bad Pete replied in his high, funny voice. "And what big eyes you have," said Little Red Riding Minnie. Big Bad Pete crept closer. "All the better to see you with," he said. "And what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Minnie. Big Bad Pete moved even closer. "All the better to eat your famous chocolate chip cookies with," he shouted, and with that he snatched the tin right out of her basket and threw off his disguise. "Ah ha ha ha! I tricked you! Now your cookies are all mine!" cried Big Bad Pete. As Little Red Riding Minnie watched, he tore the cover off the tin and emptied its entire contents into his mouth. Too bad for Big Pete, it was the wrong tin. It took only a few seconds for the super strong menthol cough drops to work their magic. Soon Big Bad Pete's face turned pink and his eyes got very large. He ran away from the house, desperate to find water. Just then, Little Red Riding Minnie's grandmother opened the door. "Oh, hello, dear," she said as she dabbed at her nose with a handkerchief. "Is everything all right?" "Oh, yes, Grandmother," Little Red Riding Minnie replied. "Everything is just fine." So Little Red Riding Minnie had a pleasant visit with her grandmother, who enjoyed the chocolate chip cookies very much. Then, knowing her grandmother was much better, she happily skipped home. And that's the end. Thank you.